record. All right. And do I see Connor? You had your hand up. Is that what you're trying to tell me? All right. Another update coming up for the SharePoint side. This is just SharePoint Online. As you know, there's a lot of templates that that are made from Microsoft and made available, and you can do custom templates. So this particular feature change is really about the Microsoft side of that. So there's two pieces to this. There's the PowerShell commandlets that allow this site template management update to happen. And this is really on the Microsoft, those created, those prerequisite ones that they're in there, right? And so the commandlets are going to be released early November for targeted release and late November for standard release. So that's part of this, right? The other part of it is this, there's a section that is in, when you select a template, there is a from Microsoft or from your organization. That's going to be adjusting so that you can see that information. That's going to be targeted late October for targeted and standard early November. But realistically, what it gives you the ability to say, you know what, those 4 or 5 different Microsoft ones, we never use that particular one, right? So it may be crisis management. Well, I don't want that to even be an option, right? So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to use the PowerShell command to be able to remove that from that select template section, right? So it does have requirements, PowerShell minimum version, that's there, right? So you have this ability to be able to then, remove that. You can hide that from that particular section, from that particular gallery, and it makes it a lot easier to be able to then push your users to the right site templates that you're looking for. Another change that's happening, and this one you just have to be aware of. You may have seen this little thing in the upper right-hand corner that says coming soon. Maybe you're already starting to get to those people who are in preview. Current channel, or mid-November to late November, is coming, and it's a toggle. And basically this would be in the, it's just that basically coming soon look and feel. You can preview it before it actually hits. Right, and this particular part of this will move your mail calendar, people, and tasks that are usually in the bottom left-hand corner, and it will move it to a left rail type scenario, just like Microsoft Teams. Other things that you can add, and you can customize this whole section. You can add to do if you want to. Yammer, bookings, and Org Explorer is also available on there. Again, customize. Important to understand as this is coming out. Let your users know. Update your training. Let them know by whatever methods that you guys use. All right, now we're moving on to the 365 suite. Just a couple of things in this particular area. Number one, this was announced not that long ago, but this is Visio web app. It's a lower end version of Visio, but literally it's going to be available to all M365 commercial plans and licenses, which means that you don't necessarily have to have everybody have those more expensive Visio licenses. Right now, if they want to really do that really high end, it's that really intricate Visio diagrams, it's all data driven and just on the fly, you're still going to need that, right? But for the most part, you can create, edit, and collaborate with the Visio web app and be able to still use Visio without having to have that desktop app. Now keep that one in mind. It is without that desktop app. Important that you do update your knowledge base and training accordingly with this, and you're going to have some different pieces to it. And Antonia, that's a great idea. I actually have to go and take a look and see what the difference is between Plan 1 and this one. I know that there's going to be some intricacies as far as really the functionality that you have, because I do know that Plan 1 has that web version of it, but I know there's a little bit something different about it. So I'll have to go and research that just a little bit more specifically. Okay. All right. Another thing on the Microsoft 365 Suite side of things, on the Compliance Manager, one of the things that a lot of people were kind of complaining about, thank you, Tony, for looking at that and grabbing that link. What they were kind of complaining about is that there was multiple places to be able to find the compliance information for like Dynamics 365 or Azure or Microsoft 365. And so what this does is it combines all three, right? So it combines all those different areas so that they're in one area from a dashboard side of things that you can then look at, get that information, act on it. And by the way, this includes a lot of the new zero trust controls that are coming out or have been coming out for a while. Currently in public preview, but the zero trust controls portion of this is already out and running. Does notice, please, it says, it does say in this particular one that you can use this to be able to create your assessments for ISO 27001, NET 853, and FedRAMP mod and high, moderate and high. And you can do your baselines on this. So again, this was announced at Ignite, but please take a look at that. That might affect you from a compliance side of things. All right, Planner, jumping to a different app. Rich text and images in Planner task notes. This is a change that is coming mid-December to early February. And what it's going to do is it's going to take that notes section and it's going to make it so it's going to be a rich text and image editor. So you can add a lot more information to it. You can stylize it. But right now it's really plain text. Now, behind the scenes, what's happening is that they're going to be updating the Microsoft Graph API for Planner. And the reason why they're doing that is they're going to make sure that if you have content in your existing planners, it's still going to be there when they switch over, right? So it's going to be available, and then you're going to be able to then use the new features with that particular planner task, if that's the case. Some things to keep in mind if you've had internal development, custom applications written that utilize Planner behind the scenes, those are going to have to get updated because the APIs are being changed. Additionally, we do have some people who are advanced Power Automate that are utilizing those API graph calls. Those will have to be updated accordingly as well. So make sure that you guys have those internal conversations with your development teams and your Power users to understand if they're doing that, and then get them that information and update your knowledge management and training accordingly as this comes out. This is one I've been waiting for quite a while. The Teams in Yammer Q&A. This is now on public preview. This is an app that if I'm in a Teams meeting and if I want to lock down so that I don't have chat, and I want to, I should say a regular Teams chat like we have in this particular meeting, and I want to be able to have a moderated chat, this is that app. And so you'll be able to go into that meeting, you'll be able to add the app in there, and then you'll be able to moderate that Q&A basically back and forth. Well, behind the scenes is actually utilizing Yammer, but you don't have to have Yammer in your available for people like they're actually utilizing it, right? So it's just using the feature set behind the scenes. So really great app. Was in public, it's in public preview at this point. They are saying that it's going to be coming out here in early 2022. But it's great because the meeting organizers can, literally be able to then manage those the questions that are coming in and post the ones that they don't want or that they want, and respond to those internally if they want to, the other ones. So great feature coming. Again, hang tight. I know there's a lot of people who've been asking, a lot of organizations been asking for this app. Another change happening, and you'll start seeing this here probably mid-November to early December for standard release and GCC in January, is that when I go into the tabs for now for my channels or my chat or my meeting, you'll see that drop down is going to be adding some new features to it. So it's going to take some things that are actually built into that page and move it into the drop-down menu, right? Reload the page, go to the website, copy link, those things that I have normally outside of the page, I will then see them in this drop-down relevant to the page or the tab that I'm in for that particular meeting, chat, or channel, right? There is going to be a one-time, and keep this in mind, there's going to be a one-time educational bubble that's going to pop up and say, hey, did you guys know that? And we'll tell you those little features there. So keep that in mind. It's going to be there. It's going to be a one-time deal, and then you should not see that educational bubble after that. And for those who didn't think they had enough emojis, starting here in mid-January to late January for standard, yeah, exactly. GCC, GC High, and then DoD, you notice the dates. They're adding up to 800 emojis. Somebody was busy. Additionally, I know, wow, got a lot of applause on that one, guys. Additionally, you'll have the ability to be able to do a search and filter to be able to find the right emoji for that particular conversation. And you just update your knowledge base. It is a little bit different experience, as you notice in the screenshot, specifically here, that it's showing you that when you click on the emoji option, it will give you a lot of those different ones, and you can hit the plus sign to get the whole big ball of wax, right? And then you'll see it looks a little different down here when they have been added to whatever that conversation was. So it's a little bit different experience, but yet it's still an emoji. All right, here's an interesting one coming up. For those organizations that have more than one language as their kind of standard language that they want to be able to use, there is a way to be able to add now 2 languages to that email invite that goes out, right? So you can do it in English, you can do it in this case, French, right? You can have up to 2 different meeting invite languages set up. Right, this is early December through mid-January, and it does require a PowerShell command to be able to do that. And so you can do this for users, you can do this for groups, right, that you have set up in 365, or you can do across the tenant, right? So you can do only 2 though. And what will affect is the Outlook desktop, Outlook web, mobile app, and desktop, Teams desktop and mobile app. All right, so a lot of good things happening, but as you know, things slip, right? Things change. And so I know this is a lot of information. This is worse than the last month that we were looking at this. These are updated messages, and you'll actually see this in the message center where it'll actually say in parentheses updated. And a lot of times the updates are the dates changed, but there are going to be a few of these where it's literally, maybe it's giving clarification. So there's a couple of them what I want to point out. Again, this deck will be available for you guys to take a look a little bit later on. The ones that I think are interesting, this is one, the co-organizer meeting role. That one's been, that date's been pushed back a couple of times now, and basically that gives us the ability to say, okay, so if I'm the organizer and I want to have Bob be a co-organizer, I can do that in the meeting options. And then it makes it easier for if I can't be there, that Bob can also do some of the back end work, right? And so if, like, say, for instance, if I want to do a breakout room, we all know that if I do a Teams breakout room, since I'm the organizer, I'm the only one who actually can do that. Well, now with a co-organizer, you can do, both of you can do that. As an example, private drafts for SharePoint pages, we talked about that. That's a really cool feature that's getting pushed back. Another one I think that I mentioned this last week, I have a typo in there, sorry about that. Dynamic E911 for US work from home. That was due out in October. That got pushed to mid-November to late November for standard, and then GCCH and DoD to mid-December to late December. That's important because there is that ruling, the Raybaum Act is coming out in January. So it's important that once this gets available, you guys start testing, you're ready to go for that particular regulation that's coming up. All right, and then lastly, I think the last one, actually second to last one, admin actions required. We talked about Windows 11 or IE 11 last month. That's still out there, guys, but there's a couple other ones that you do need to keep in mind. Number one, OneDrive Sync, support for OneDrive Sync for different OSs, Windows 8.1, Windows 7, Windows 8. Please take a look at that information. Important, there is this change that's happening and rolling out January 1st, 2022 and finishing mid-January, where these are then going to be affected. So if you have Windows 8.1, you have Windows 7 or even Windows 8, they suggest get them updated, get them out if possible, right? But just understand that if you have OneDrive Sync on those, they're not going to necessarily work, or they're going to have reduced functionality. There's some upcoming API requirements that are changing. In fact, they're deprecating some features in there. So if you have anybody who's developed anything utilizing the Exchange web services for Exchange Online, there are some retiring APIs, and these are the ones that have least used, right? That link there will give you that information specifically. And then classic Exchange admin console features, message route trays, remote domains, those things are being deprecated in the classic one. They're available in the new one. If some people just haven't moved over to that, new version of the Exchange admin console. So make sure you guys doing that, get your documentation updated appropriately. And I mentioned this last time, guys, but I really, really like this Power BI Message Center template. If you had a chance to do that, go please. Denzel did a really good job with this Power BI tool. This really gets you that information on your computer. You can share it with others if you need to, if you have the Power BI Premium subscription. Great tool. That's all I'm going to say. All right, guys. So let's actually get to why you're all here. So today we have, oh, sorry, my fault. I'm not used to doing all this work here. All right, so a couple things. Number one, we do this donation. This is just a, hey, thank you types thing. Instead of giving out different things, we do a donation to Open Arms of Minnesota. This one specifically for this particular month. And this group really, what they do is they really focus on not just the food aspect of things. They look at the food, they look at the body, mind, and soul in helping that community, right? So this year, or this month, I should say, we're donating $200 to Open Arms of Minnesota. And part of that it's just a great opportunity to be able to give back to Minnesota. We also have a sponsor for today, everybody. And so that is CDW, and they sponsored the giveaway today. 2 Amazon gift cards for $100. Ooh. I might actually have to fill out the survey for the first time ever. So at the end, stick around, make sure you take that survey at the end, and then we will pick those out at the end of our session today. So please make sure you do that. We actually have, I believe, I didn't double check. Did Tate make it onto the meeting today? Can you come off mute if you're here, Tate?
Yep. Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Would you like me to kind of take over for that 10 minutes here?
Would love you to. Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I just got, I don't think I'll need the full 10 minutes, but just for the quick overview on CDW and what kind of work we're doing with you guys. So awesome. Yeah, thank you. I'll pop my screen up.
Great.
While I'm doing that, great intro. That was some interesting updates on mine as well and all that. I'm gonna have to keep this meeting in my calendar.
Yes.
That was great. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to sponsor this. I'm a little bit newer to the CDW team, so I'm out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I'm actually moving down to Lakeville and at the end of the month here, but I essentially am the face of our Microsoft service practice per se in the Minnesota area. So all kinds of conversations around M365 like you guys are talking about here. So I thought it would be relevant to quick touch on some of the details that we're doing in today. So just a little bit of time, so I won't be long-winded here. Just some of the work we're doing with Microsoft, a quick case study I thought might be interesting. So I like specifics, but specifics can also get long and drawn out. So I'll get through this quickly. But this is the kind of slides I'd pull up if someone asked, like, why would I work with CDW in terms of the Microsoft projects? And real quick, a lot of it starts with just a lot of the talented people that we have on staff from a multiple different angles. So first of all, from a licensing side, that's never an easy conversation. So, over 100 folks in the field like myself, as well as internally, that will help our customers work through that. Then about, coming up on close to 50 solution architects just dedicated to Microsoft with their specialties for designing solutions, ensuring customers get to the right direction, and then about 100 folks on delivering those solutions. So that's kind of the core piece of our Microsoft practice from a people standpoint. But then there's also, hundreds of other specialists on related technologies. And we've seen, especially where I work, essentially pretty exclusively on Microsoft, there's still other technologies that play a lot of times. So it can be helpful to have someone that can pull in an engineer or a resource that might know another kind of product that plays into a certain technology to be able to make it work. So that's some of the back end with the people. From an experience standpoint, again, I'll go through these numbers pretty quickly, but you can see thousands of agreements. We were one of the first partners to take on the CSP program, and you can see that in some of those numbers around M365 and Azure. Thousands of service engagements. I spend a lot of my time on the collaboration side of the house. So whether that would be, implementing Teams or telephony or securing those kinds of items. And then you can see a lot of Windows 10 seats deployed as well. And that resulted in basically the sum of this, you can see in some of those awards, is that we just have a lot of experience helping customers here. Over 2019 and 2020, we helped the most customers move on to M365 in the US. And that comes with a lot of experience to be able to kind of see the roadblocks before they come up and maneuver through all that. So with that said, that's the volume that we work with as far as the quality and some of the competencies and Microsoft certifications. Again, I won't get too deep here, but pretty much all of them that are listed here, I know for sure all of them on the M365 piece around modern workplace and security around these different categories, then taking those a step further into the advanced specialization. So around Azure again, and then in the modern work side, around adoption and change management, and all those listed below with security. So with the modern work side and that one with adoption and change management, I thought a case study around that might be interesting because I know, talking to this group, it's a little more of a technical audience. You have some great speakers coming up. A lot of the contingencies that I talk about in the day-to-day around, how to prioritize workloads, which one should go first, what kind of governance and security could be coming up, and in a short amount of time, didn't really think it'd make a ton of sense to cover that. So maybe just another approach of how are we getting users to adopt this, and where is CDW investing in that? So, this is something that we'll tack on to engagements at the end of it, whether it be whatever M365 technology it is, and we'll kind of right size which level of support customers need. But when you think of this, it's just some of the practicalities around what kind of collateral do we need to gather. The Microsoft does a great job of putting a lot of that content out, but in a specific engagement, if someone who's done that before, how do we know what to use? How do we know let's implement a plan for training the trainers and the admin knowledge? And then the biggest piece of it is how do we connect it to the business so that the usage rates are implemented and then we actually get the value out of all the technology that we're implementing. So especially with COVID and hybrid work and not having everyone in the office and the dispersed workforce, being able to communicate in an effective way and get change is harder than ever. So this is why I thought it might be interesting just to let you know this is one of the many services we have around Microsoft. And just a quick example of that, and then I can wrap up for my little spiel here, is we do this with a lot of customers, but Farm Bureau Insurance is one that was kind enough to let us reference them. So I just pulled some bullets from an engagement we had with them. But they were on 2,400 employees. We started working with them right before COVID. So these numbers were all pre-COVID from an adoption standpoint. I know COVID helped the adoption rate with a lot of these technologies because of the hybrid work. But they had turned on M365. They had OneDrive not totally being utilized around 11%, Teams around 21%. And they were just looking for someone to try to get the value out of that. So you can see on the right side there where CDW came in and supported them. We had a 4-tiered strategy around marketing. How do we prepare this message and communicate it? How are we enabling these end users, just the basic training of them, and then how do we measure that? And I'd say the most impactful when I talk to the people that do this is the line of business interviews. and having a strategy around that. And sometimes it's nice too, just to have a partner to come in and lead these conversations to connect different groups. Because then you can start to get into some of the weeds, like in that last bullet point there on the left, we found just a lot of inefficient and legacy collaboration methods that sometimes IT teams don't even know about. I mean, talking about like shadow IT around, third-party storage applications that IT is not governing, and corporate data is being shared there, or just, USB drives being sent back and forth, and just stuff that can get messy pretty quickly. And then once we can identify, how organizations are getting the job done today, potentially where inefficiencies might be, and security concerns, we can start to craft a message to each of these groups. So again, just an example. I don't have time to get too into the weeds here. Another fun little fact is the gal who led this, Lisa Bell, is really great at this. And they were looking for 50 people to volunteer as champions. And we ended up getting 150, so 3 times the number of people. And I think, as you all know, user adoption training usually isn't the most popular subject, but just trying to make it a little more painless, contextualized to people's roles. And then it drove that adoption up to 63% for OneDrive, 72% for Teams, and then COVID gave Teams another bump as well in March 2020. But again, I just wanted to share a little bit of the context. A lot of you know and are familiar with the initial conversations, but how do we take those conversations and the investment into Microsoft and all the capabilities it has and get the full value out of it and show that IT made the right decision here. So just one of the many case studies there. So with that, Don, I think that's all I really had today. I just wanted to give an overview on what the kind of work CDW is doing with Microsoft, the kind of competencies we have, and a quick case study of that. But I appreciate the time to sponsor this.
No, thank you, Nate. That was really good information. I've worked with CDW when I was a customer, as well as now that I work at Microsoft. So I appreciate that. I think you guys do a great job. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken today and let us know. So please feel free to reach out to Nate if you have any other, or Tate, I should say. I'm sorry.
No problem.
If you have any other questions.
All righty. Thank you.
Have a good
care,
one.
everyone.
Excellent. All right. And let me get my deck up here. Oh, let's just get to it. So we have a great group of panelists that are joining. So if Suzanne George, Christian Buckley, Stephanie Donahue, and Sharon Weaver, if you can turn on your videos, I'll spotlight you guys and we'll get started. Hey, Christian. Hey, guys.
Going to be spotlighted. Is that like it's an opportunity, or is it more like a threat?
Well, I don't know. Maybe not. It just depends. Give me a second to get everybody on there. I was so happy when this feature finally showed up that I can actually do more than one spotlight in Teams. So now we have everybody joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today after Ignite and kind of talking through things a little bit. We appreciate your time, and of course the great information you guys are going to be sharing with the team today. What I'd like to do first is I'd like to just, number one, quick introduction, who you are, right? What is your day job look like a little bit, and then give me something interesting that maybe somebody has met you before, but something that not everybody knows about you. So let's start with Christian, because on my screen he's top left, so we'll just start there.
As I'm sitting here doing the multitasking, trying to respond to work-related things too.
Yeah, of course.
Not that anybody else ever does that. It's just me, I'm sure. Hey everybody, this is so Christian Buckley. I am a 10-time, I know this is like it's blatant self-promotion back here on the wall here. 10-time Office Apps and Services MVP. Was originally a SharePoint MVP. So been in the community for a long time. I was at some people know this. I was at Microsoft for 3.5 years. I joined Microsoft to help with the launch of what is now Office 365. So I joined, it was called Microsoft Managed Services, MMS. Then it was rebranded as BPOS, or Business Productivity Online Services. But I've been in the IT world for 30 years now. And for the first half of my career, I was a business analyst for a couple of years, but was project manager, did PMO deployments for companies as a consultant for a bunch of big companies. Had my own software company that I sold to Rational Software. So I've been in like the PMO, like that side of things, which is how I actually got introduced into collaboration technology and SharePoint. See, something people don't know about me. I share this once in a while, but so I actually, my first client back in 2005 who insisted they wanted the SharePoint thing, I tried to steer them clear of SharePoint. Yeah, I was doing a project server deployment, which did not go well in 2005, if those that remember that from that era. But yeah, I tried to talk them out of SharePoint. They insisted that they wanted to do that. A year later, I was working at Microsoft. So yeah.
There you go.
Working on.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you, Christian.
Yep.
All right. Let's jump to Stephanie. If you could take a couple minutes and do the same thing.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Donahue, and I'm a Microsoft Regional Director and MVP. And I've been in IT about 20 years. I've been consulting for about half that, about 10 years. And now I run my own company called The Pate Group, and we do Office 365 consulting services focused around the collaboration tool stack, so business process automation. And when I'm not managing the team, we've got about 20 folks on our team, but when I'm not doing management duties, I do still spend time with customers on helping them with their Office 365 strategy, road mapping, just trying to figure out how to get from here to there. So that's kind of my day job. I do a little bit of everything at a small organization, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's me.
And then something interesting about you?
Oh gosh. I don't have a fun fact. I don't know. Here's one for you. I am terrified of cotton balls. How about that?
Cotton balls.
I hate cotton.
Oh,
random sidebar fact. There you go.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to write that one down, Stephanie. What not to send you for Christmas.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. Yep.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yep.
All right. Suzanne, fresh off the airplane, why don't you go ahead and talk, introduce yourself.
Hi. Yes, I am so excited I got to fly or work today. So it was a little bit touch and go there. The plane decided to wait on some other people who had some connection issues. But hi, my name is Suzanne George. I am a North America practice lead for modern workplace and collaboration for Cognizant. We are a worldwide organization that does all things technology pretty much. I am also a Microsoft Regional Director. And I am really excited to talk to you guys today. A lot of things that I like to talk about are collaboration, SharePoint, and anything that connects people together. Fun fact is I guess sometimes I'm in for pain and suffering because way back in SharePoint early days, 2003, I spoke at the Azure Worldwide Conference on how to get Azure Arc Server to run on the same machine as SharePoint 2003. So,
wow.
Yeah, that was fun and excitement, but it was quite interesting.
Yes, I would agree with that. Thank you, Suzanne. All right, Sharon.
Hi guys, I'm Sharon Weaver and I own and run Smarter Consulting. I too have been in IT forever, about 25, little over 25 years this year. I've been getting paid to do IT stuff. And my very first job, I was doing desktop support for Gateway 2000. So I've literally been in every single role there is in IT, and really kind of moved into business analyst and product ownership and program management and just kind of kept working my way up. I have a 6 Sigma black belt. And then just kind of like Stephanie decided to expand my horizons and run my own thing. And so I spend my day probably half answering questions, being on phone calls, sending emails, and the other half I do a lot of training. So I am a Microsoft Regional Director and an MCT. So I have a pretty strong foot in the training door. This last year has been a little weird with COVID, but typically I usually have, I don't know, 20, 30% of my time is doing some sort of training for somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
Perfect. Fun fact. So my husband told me, I asked him what fun fact I needed to say. So I've been on 26 cruises so far. Everybody thinks that's a fun fact. In fact, we travel constantly. We're in Cabo today. And we travel constantly, and I travel so much that I'm actually a licensed travel agent so that I can book my own travel.
I know who to go to now, Sharon. And let me guess, is like Michelle like in the room next to you or someplace?
She's about a mile down the road.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
she's
right. I was
nearby.
wondering about that.
Very nearby.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you were able to find a stable Wi-Fi connection, I should say, and join us for today. So thank you, everybody, for those intros. So the first thing I really want to there was a lot of stuff that was like pushed out last week at Ignite. What was, and I'm just going to kind of, I want all of you to kind of talk about it, but what was that one big thing announcement that you really felt like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I think this is going to be, that's the next thing that we really, really need to focus on. And it doesn't necessarily just really focus on that M365 side of things, the collaboration side of things, but, was there something that really stood out like, wow, this is really cool? Anybody want to start before I start calling on names? Because Christian goes first. I think he just unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really easy. It's an all-around loop and what that actually means. And we'll get in and talk to you about it. But I still bring up often, and I blogged about it a number of times over the years. But back when everybody remember when the Gig Jam was announced. And Julia White gave that keynote address. Was that Build? Was that? I'm trying to remember which event that was, or the partner conference. I think it was the partner conference.
Okay.
Anyway, so she did that demo, and that was the one where she was walking around the stage, and it was I think that was the one where it was kind of an augmented reality with the motorcycle redesign. That one. Anyway, but the idea of pulling people in and collaborating around highly secure things like going into dynamics and talking about accounting information around a specific project. You don't want to bring people in to give them access to everything so you could discuss this one piece for one meeting. Give them access to the pertinent information in the time that they, for that time, remove them, get their information, update it real time, it live, goes elsewhere. Like that concept. I remember at the time thinking, that is completely smoke and baling wire. It's completely for demo. It was fake, but fantastic. I understand their vision of where they're going, and that's what Microsoft has finally delivered. So it's nothing, well, I won't say that there's nothing new in the Loop announcements, because I was actually taken back by the standalone application of Microsoft Loop. The prominence of Loop as an equal new product in Microsoft 365. That kind of took me back. And the first question that I saw come across the transom was, well, then why am I using Teams if now Loop is going to be where all this goes on? So, but very exciting. I look at that as just another opportunity for partners to answer those questions. It's not about problems created. It's about opportunities.
Oh, agreed. Anybody want to continue on that idea? I mean, what did you guys think about Loop?
Oh, I don't know. I think having one more product for project management, like I'm going to take the opposite side here. And I think it's confusing. I think we need time with it, right? Because I think there's like, but we have Teams and we're doing project stuff in Teams and we've got all these different places already to put things. I think we're going to need a little bit of time to figure out. And I liked some of the integration that they're doing, the context IQ stuff, like being able to pull things together. That's the key, because with so many different places and things all over, we're going, well, why do we need one more product to do that? And I think we need a little time to figure out how all of these pieces fit together. So I guess for me, my big concern in working directly with customers is helping them understand, why would I use it? When would I use it? Where does it fit into my day? And how is it helpful in the context of pulling things together? Because that is what it's doing, but how does it fit in with everything else that we're working on and the other platforms that are available?
Yeah, I was curious to see who was going to say Loop first. I feel like there's going to be a betting pool ahead of this. But I agree. I mean, I think I know what's really funny is kind of, I agree with everybody, but I think that Loop it's kind of the culmination of everything that we've been talking about in terms of where we headed in the future in a cloud-centric world for what, 10 years, right? Where we've been saying at what point can we wake up in the morning and maybe I don't have my computer, maybe I'm at the library, maybe I'm at my mom's house, maybe I'm on my phone, and I want to be able to do the things I need to do, but I want to see the things I need to say and interact with the things I need to interact with. And I feel like we're finally getting to the point where that's becoming a reality. And like Stephanie, I'm really excited to really kind of understand how, you know, how each little part of that works so that we can help our clients really be able to have more collaboration, more productivity. And I agree with Christian too. I'm a big fan. I don't see problems. I see opportunities. I think it's a lot of really cool ways to let people do something better.
What it's, I think that's the difference. It's the Loop components like that, that feature versus then a branded, like a standalone, a desktop application. That's the kind of the question marks popping up.
Yeah, and where does that fit into the rest of it, right? And I think, so Tony put into the chat here, there's also, I think it was Tony was the one I was saying, it's integrated into Teams. I mean, I think that's where a lot of us are like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. But then what Christian is saying, I was like, what's the app? Where are we going?
That's the point. And then they demoed that. I mean, it's integrated into Outlook, into the Office applications. It's wherever you're working. And so like I get that part of it. But then to have an entirely new and separate workspace. Yeah, that's the part.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Suzanne, do you have anything you wanted to, because I've seen you and wanted to jump in here. So let's give you a second here to jump in.
Yeah, no, I think Loop is actually really exciting, but it's really going to be exciting for the corporate organizations in maybe a year or so. But what's exciting for the partners right now is for us to be able to go really be able to dream the big dreams that we have been thinking about. And now we actually starting to get some of the building blocks that we can put things together. My biggest thing is how do we go hybrid? How are we going to like reimagine what the workforce is going to look like in the next 6 months, in the next year, next 2 years? And I think Loop is one of those things that can help us bring hybrid and office and on the road, in the airplane, wherever you are, together. And so I'm really excited for the future. This is right, just like Christian said, and Sharon, this is the opportunity for partners, for imaginations to run wild, because now you have things to, things to really work with. And if you add on top of that, all of the APIs that happened inside of the Office suite for the Office add-ins, and you start really starting to bring that into your Teams meeting, you're going to really have some really creative things coming soon.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think you're hitting on the one of the things I was hoping somebody would bring up is hybrid work, right? And there's been this big change at with Microsoft, and I think a lot of companies are following suit, is now that we've had COVID, now that we've seen that we're going to have people going back to work, what does that mean? And I agree with that. I do think this is going to be that one of those tools that's going to help out with that. Completely agree. Awesome. All right.
So to add on to that, just really quickly, if I don't know how many of you guys got to play around in the AltSpace VR with some of the meetings. I had an absolute blast in there. And in fact, we're going to try to host some of our internal meetings in AltSpace VR just to try to bring that sense of connection together with our teams in a space that's different. And I sent out an email after Ignite, and several of us got in, and we had done an Ignite picture maybe at the last Ignite, where we were all standing together and we're, hey, we're all at Ignite. And then we did the same thing in the AltSpace VR. And I sent it out to my team and I said, hey, we're going to have our next meeting in AltSpace VR just to give it a test. You can be 2D, you can be 3D.
Yep.
There was so much passion around that and excitement around, hey, I'm going to wear my 3D glasses. I'm just going to go on my computer because I don't have those. I think that's an opportunity for us as well to really think about how we can bring people together that way too.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that's a great segue, because what about that the mesh piece that was announced along with that? Because I did see that. I think I saw your post, Suzanne, about the AltSpace and jumping into it. But right along, I mean, Teams and augmented reality. You don't even need to have the headset if you don't need to, right? You can do it all within that. What were you guys' thoughts about that?
It's the biggest thing since SharePoint Spaces.
That's what I was thinking.
Look, I'm on the naysayer side of that side. I just think it is so early on, and it has nothing to do with, like, I'm passionate technologist. I'm excited about that. And for a lot of people, especially from the accessibility standpoint and the interaction, I mean, like, I get it. I understand that. It's not for me. It's also, I have people that complain that they've texted me days ago and I've not responded. It's like, I've been hybrid here for the last decade, more than a decade. I have my multiple monitors here. If it doesn't show up on a monitor, then I'll see it every few days. My phone's on the floor behind me. Like, I don't even like taking phone calls. Like, we should do a Teams chat if there's something, if you need to reach me. Like, but so it just doesn't appeal to me in its current form. But having said that, I shared, so just before COVID, I went with a good friend, some of you know him, Noah Sparks, who's now at Planet, and we went to a couple demonstrations up in Salt Lake City. I'm down in Lehi, Utah, up where we looked at these vendors that were, and me, very on the very skeptical side of this. This was right after the SharePoint Spaces announcement, and I just went in there thinking, like, this is just, it's for gamers and nothing else. There's no thing. And saw these vendors that were out there selling solutions today, primarily in the learning space, but like solutions that are available, inexpensive solutions via Steam today, where educators can go and develop content and you can interact in the 2D or 3D environment. But with that, I'm like, it was a fantastic experience. So I will acknowledge that it's easy to sit and not participate and criticize, be like, it's not there yet, and like all those things. When you put it on, even if you with the level of graphics and things that we're at today, it is a different experience. It is much more powerful than give it credit for, so it's easy to mock, but people need to check it out. And I recognize that. I don't think companies are going to run out there and embrace us in any big way anytime soon, but I see the path where it's going. I say directionally correct.
I think I think you're absolutely right. I think it's the biggest part of this that's difficult is the point of entry, right? And so when you think about individuals using things like VR and 3D spaces and things like that, I think it's a lot easier because I can make my own personal decision whether I want to invest in that equipment, whether I want to use it, whether I want to play with it, practice with it. I think when you start talking corporately, it's a much bigger investment, and it's not just the cost of the hardware. There's training and there's support and there's a lot of things that come with it that we don't think about. But I will tell you, 10 years ago, when we were talking about who was using SharePoint and who wasn't using SharePoint, who was still on a file share, and when we were talking about who's going to do hybrid work and who's going to allow, their employees to be able to take a phone call at home on their laptop as opposed to having a desk phone. I mean, those were very early indicators of kind of more hybrid collaborative technologies. I think you're going to see the same things. I think you're going to see a very small pool of enterprise customers that are going to define a really good use case for this, build the business initiative around it, come up with the funding, and those places are going to be differentiators in the marketplace compared to some of their competition. I think it's just going to take it to a whole new level. But I think much like the things we saw before, because of the price point and because not just money, but all of the things that come into that price point, to get into
Can you hear me, Carol?
Things like spaces.
Okay.
I think are going to take a lot longer, just because the cost that's associated with them, I think, is so big. But I do think we're going to see people who are starting to do that.
I would agree with that.
Too, there's a component to this that I read an article the other day that was really interesting about how the younger generation is pushing us really hard in terms of technology and the way that the workplace is changing and the flexibility requests, and they're just not tolerating how things used to be done before. And they're drastically and very quickly changing the way that people and the way that employers have to onboard them and engage them in order to keep them there. And I'm really curious as this next generation comes in to see, they might take this stuff up and run with it and run right over us if we're not careful, right? Like they've grown up on video games and technology. You guys seen Free Guy? My kids love that movie. You know, like I think, you know, they're already using filters every day on Snapchat and all this social media. I'm super curious to see how as they come into the workforce, how they influence all of this and the use of it. I think it's something to keep an eye on, and something for those of us that have been around for 20 years. We might need to stay on our toes because they're coming.
Yeah, well, one thing that we are seeing right now in organizations that this technology might be suitable for is they're really struggling to help new employees onboard into the brand of the organization. You don't have that lobby experience. You don't have that connection to who is the company. Like, hey, we're blue, so everything, you know, reflects the blue or reflects our brand and reflects who we are and our values and our, you know, objectives of what we want to do. So we've had several organizations come to us and say, we want to rethink the whole internet. We want to blow it up. We want it to be a virtual experience when you walk in the door, so that when you're doing onboarding, you actually feel like you're in the company. So I think the challenge for us is it's probably going to come quicker than we think. We've had several people come to us going, hey, we want to create a virtual ODC because people are spread out now worldwide. We want them to feel together. We want them to feel the connection. We want you guys to think about how do you bring people together in a different space that they're used to doing at home. So bringing the home into the office more. So while we can say, yes, I'm not really sure, I think like you said, Stephanie, the younger generation is going to push us into these out of the box models that we haven't thought of before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Well, and like Christian commented that he wants to see more AR solutions. I mean, we do so much AR now and don't even think about it. And I think that's kind of like that midpoint between reality, like real, and virtual reality. It's that kind of somewhere in between.
Well, what was it, 3 years ago when the Dynamics team, when they released those two, AR solutions, and that was like the practical. Think of it this way: like your car breaks down in the middle of the night somewhere. Like my car, so much electronics in it, I don't even know what to look for anymore on it. I can change a thermostat in a 1988 Yugo, but I can't do it for my Audi. So. Just as the state of the world where we are. No, but to be able to jump out of my car, prompt it, like to call support and via my phone. And I know I'm an advocate for more of us becoming glass holes again, having like the Google Glass type headset, but being able to look at your engine and a support person pop up in augmented reality. And based on my view, what I'm seeing, point to and say, like, there it is, highlight that, like, that's the thing you need to look at. And that doesn't look right. That's the piece. Or can you get it from a different angle and move around and walk you through a process? The demo that was done, again, I think it was 3 years ago, where Microsoft released two products. They used the example of in a like a manufacturing facility and this like 2-ton piece of equipment, and saying it's not just a matter of looking and saying, well, measurement wise, like this is where you could walk around the floor and be like, where are we going to put this device, this machine? Okay, walking around and visually, oh, I see that it fits within this space. However, there's no way to get it around the corners in this space to fit it in that space. Therefore, it won't work. They could literally walk around in their view. There's this mapping that knows the dimensions of the space. And so they could find, okay, this will work. And here's the path in to be able to load this giant machine. Like those two examples of augmented reality that's the future. That's what I want to see, that level of interaction versus go to another environment and have that. Like I want the Jedi Council experience. I want to sit in a conference room with, I'm the only one in person, and yet I can have, Stephanie, Susanna, and Sharon, sitting there around me, and they see me from the same experience, and where we can have a meeting where I see that kind of holographic experience. I want to have that experience.
I think
And-
that's probably going to be one of your entry points, is you're going to see meetings go to the next level with augmented reality.
Yeah.
Well, and just to your example, Christian, anybody who can work faster, right? Are you going to pay a little more as a consumer to get a faster rate? Yeah, I can tell you, I was stuck with my son on the side of the road in his car. Could I get faster help by getting, some kind of augmented reality help and get off the road faster? That's worth it, right? So the
Mhm.
businesses that are doing these things, they're gonna end up ahead, and they're going to
Agreed.
end up way ahead in some cases. And so as a business, we need to keep looking at these things. And that was actually one of the themes. They were talking about how fast that the business is moving, and that the pace and the interconnectedness. How did they word it exactly? It was the hyperconnected business and the pace of
Yep.
business. That was one of the core themes, was hyperconnected, and just being remote ready and supply chain resilience, and all of those things come down to being able to work more effectively, work faster, collaborate better. So big theme from Microsoft on that front.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think small businesses and even medium-sized businesses can actually become a lot more agile with this technology. We had a huge snowstorm in Texas in January, February of this year, and we call it Snowmageddon because we don't know what to do with snow. And there was 6 inches of snow on the ground. My heater decides at that moment in time to die. And so I'm on the phone with the local heater and air conditioner guy, and he's like, well, that's 3 days and before I can even get out of my driveway. And so he said, well, let's just turn on our iPhones and let's just FaceTime. And I got out my screwdriver and my heater was fixed in 20 minutes. So I think if we can do a lot of this, and if we can segue into like the Power Virtual Agents and some of the new stuff around Power Automate, I think that's actually going to enable even those businesses to work even quicker, because now you can get from problem to solution so much faster.
Yeah.
Well, and not even gets us started talking. There was a very sliver about IoT in there too. There wasn't a lot, but there was a little sliver of IoT. And I think, if you want to tie everything together, not only can we have that piece, but when we're talking about that interconnectedness, not only are we connecting to each other, but we're connecting more to our devices as well. So as our appliances and as our hardware becomes smarter, and is able to essentially give us feedback, and to Christian's comment, your car has a computer motherboard in it now that tells you what's wrong with it. I mean, what if your furnace has a motherboard in it that tells you what's wrong with it? What if your fridge has a motherboard that tells you what's wrong with it? Do we even need the repairman to come to see it anymore, or could they simply log in, to their dashboard and run a diagnostic against whatever appliance it is that you've got an issue with, and maybe be able to tell you, oh, yep, this is the issue. Let's just go ahead and get the part ordered and fix it right away. So I think when we add IoT to the rest of that, it becomes this kind of true, full, integrated environment.
Yeah, so much complaining from my devices around my house that are. No, I think that the kind of, to Stephanie's point about like the theme that was running through is really about AI. If you go and look at all of the announcements, how many of those are AI related enabled features, capabilities? It's all about doing more, doing things more efficiently. And it's what we've always talked about, with technology. I know that with, we talk about doing more with less. And for so long, so much of those of us that worked in tech, it was about keeping servers up and running, and like maintaining that. What was being done with the servers was secondary to keeping everything up and running. And we're now getting into the era, and it was introduced with the cloud and now with the AI capabilities, where it's less about keeping that stuff running. You still need to have those fundamental understandings of integration, and especially multi-cloud, and like all of these other, opportunities to go out there and learn. But it's so much more about now that your core business, understanding what are you trying to accomplish with the technology, how can you do more, how can you do it more efficiently, and that process of continual improvement. And so many of the announcements, that's what it was about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, any other thoughts on that?
I just want to add one final comment. And
Okay.
the comment is, Thank you, Ignite, for talking about productivity, because I feel like for the last few years, we have focused so much on the back end of things and the infrastructure and the architecture and Azure, which I love Azure, but here's 80 billion Azure, discussions and maybe one productivity, that it was really exciting, especially since it's in my wheelhouse, but really exciting to see Ignite really focus on the people and the interconnectedness and the collaboration and the productivity. So big props for that.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a big change. I mean, and I think a lot of the products that we're seeing now really are focused on that part of it, right? And not necessarily what's going on behind the scenes, because a lot of it is cloud now, right? And so IT is having to change to keep up with that part of it, and be able to give that as a, that employee experience, end user feel, right? That's happening more and more. I would completely agree with that.
Could I just say that, so that kind of goes back to where we started with the loop discussion, but yep. I'm not a fan of the phrasing, the in the flow of work messaging. Anyway, not a fan. I'm waiting for the next thing, the next marketing message to come out. I get it. And that's, I like the, the contextual computing. That concept of, I don't want to have to, I lose productivity when I'm multitasking, when I have to, alt tab, switch between applications, switch between browsers, trying to chase down, like, where's that? I'm here a dinging, there's a notification, which application, where did I have that conversation with this person on that topic, and looking across all those different things. One of the reasons why I think, I love Teams, and why it's been one of the reasons why it's been successful is that ability to bring all those pieces together within that workspace, and now even more with the collaborative applications and with the the fluid framework and being able to integrate those pieces in. You really can think about the complexity we're about to add into the templates in our provisioning processes, to add into much more intelligent templates that we'll be able to build in to connect with all these other applications. So much more that you'll be able to do to customize and personalize all around productivity. It's very exciting that we're getting to this space where we can do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So before we move on to the next one, I want to make sure everybody from the user group knows that if you do have a question for this great panel, make sure you throw your hand up. I'll get to you, then we'll have you come off, or you can throw it in the chat, but love it if you'd come off mute and then ask the panel your question, but please make sure you raise your hand prior to, so I appreciate that. All right, so Loop, Mesh, IoT, what other things from Ignite do you think are big topics that we really should kind of talk about a little bit?
I think we can't miss the last core topic, which is the end-to-end security. That's a huge one. We've seen so much, right? Cybersecurity, big this year, where we've seen some pretty big breaches happen. And I think, anybody who's not paying attention to security shouldn't be in the cloud. It's too dangerous to be there if you're not looking at your secure score, getting your multi-factor authentication in place, doing some of those baseline things, and then continuing to look at it over time as you start doing external sharing and all that. There's 1,000 little layers of security available in the cloud, that we have to be looking at this stuff right now.
And not just end-to-end security was really important, but introducing it, but supporting it in the SMB market, I think is huge. Yep. Because for years, enterprise security has been a thing. It's just a matter of how well they're, managing it and maintaining it. But I don't think SMB security has been taken quite as seriously, just because, it's only a few people and they're kind of small and they'll just buy their own thing. And I think the fact that we're integrating the SMB security in on top of that is just phenomenal.
Well, and I think a lot of the companies that utilize this are in that space, right? And not having that thought through, we're leaving everything wide open, and there are customers that really are going to be a problem. Agreed. Was there one thing in particular, or a couple of things in particular with the security side that really stood out as being, oh, well, about time we got that in place? Or was it just a whole bunch of stuff?
Well, one of my big notes, I know I pretty much just spilled the beans on what my big note was, but my big note was the fact that it's getting included in Business Premium to add Microsoft Defender. Because, this has been something when I have clients coming to me and saying, well, what do you mean I have to get an E5 license to have enough security to cover my people? I'm already on this business plan and we're never going to grow more than, 100 people. Why do I need to get an E5? Blah, blah, blah. And so I think thinking about the SMB market and finally saying, we're going to take you seriously and we're going to understand that just because you're a small business doesn't mean you want some of the perks and some of the services that we do for our larger business. So I think just adding Defender into that business license is huge.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any thoughts, Stephanie, that you thought was like, wow?
I did like to see that there's more available in terms of the reporting APIs and what you can do to manage multi-cloud. So just coming out and just saying, okay, just because I'm in Microsoft stack, I'm not limited to Microsoft, because so many businesses are multi-cloud now. You've got things in other places, and you know how it is. Your marketing group or your sales group goes off and gets Salesforce, and everyone else is committed into Teams. And how do you manage all those things? And just seeing just across the board more management in general, and that's going to help both on the security side. Identity, there's a lot of conversations on, single sign-on and creating kind of that one identity so that you're getting all of that across the different platforms. And I love to see that. I have the IT pro background. That's where I came from, is kind of up through the help desk and network administrator ranks. And so for me to see all of that, I think it's a lot to get your arms around, but to see Microsoft embracing it instead of looking at them like a competitor and saying, well, we don't do that and we don't connect there. I think it's difficult because the reality is we have to deal with it, and they're allowing us to now manage it in one place and really bringing it together under one umbrella. So for me, that continued effort in that direction is, I just think, really important.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, we've seen that in the past with Microsoft bringing in the ability to be able to do Linux and some of those things and embracing some of those other technologies, but now actually other complete different cloud platforms. It's a huge, huge undertaking, and just making sure that we can secure all of it in one spot. I would agree with that.
On this topic, I was having a conversation a few days ago with somebody. I was trying to remember who it was. I just had a conversation about how just the maturity of Microsoft 365 in general, just where we are, and the change away from the olden days of wanting to customize and build SharePoint, build the stack into what you needed for your business. Usually meant breaking a lot of things, and then opening up security, multiple layers of security issues, depending on what you're doing, how good your internals were around that. But essentially breaking something to build what you need, and how we're able to get so much more, within the framework of Microsoft 365 without having to break things to get it. And it's just been from where we are like 10 years ago to where we are today. It's night and day. So that's more of an observation there, which is at the 50,000 foot level, which is where I operate on security as a topic.
Well, and one thing
true.
Go ahead, Suzanne, do you have anything else to say about that?
Well, I just think that's so true. I mean, we used to have to, how many people went in there and messed with the SharePoint Hive and, we had to do this to make something work. And then it's like, we're going to have to turn our firewalls into pretzels to try to get something to. And to even extend on that even further is Microsoft is starting to say, yes, there are other hyperscalers out there, and we need to be able to allow our organizations to connect with them, but connect with them securely. So things like I would put in the chat, Azure External Identities to me is huge, because organizations don't work all by themselves. They have to work with other organizations. And where you 99% of the times have to break stuff is when you're trying to collaborate with someone outside your organization. And so that realization that, hey, there are other hyperscalers, there are other people out there, and you're going to need to connect with them securely, I think is a huge step forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing that I, in my experience in the past, as a consultant and as being on the customer side for a while, I have talk to a lot of security people, and they keep on saying, and I'm going to throw a little bomb out here and see what you guys think, but I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Why should I go all Microsoft security in this? It's because that's, I mean, this is what we're really talking about. Microsoft is really going to be that place where you're putting all those eggs in one basket. My last job, that guy was like, nope, I can't do it. I can't put everything in Microsoft. I can't invest all in Microsoft, because what happens if this breaks down, right? So what do you guys say about something like that?
I would say hybrid cloud is here, and we need to embrace it. And the sooner that we are able to have those conversations with organizations, they are going hybrid cloud. They're going to use cloud over here and cloud over there. But the good news is Microsoft has a great stack to start with. So if you can help customers see, you can have hybrid, but you can have Microsoft as your base. I think that's where we need to approach it. We don't want to shun away other hybrid clouds, because that just means you have dual security and dual security implementations. And now you've got two people doing what one person needs to do. So I think Microsoft is on the right trail. Let me be your core, and then you can have other things going on in other places.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I mean, I think if somebody came to me and said, I'm just trying to decide, should we go all in or not? Like, for every single time that we do a consultation, I look at the whole picture. I try to look at what are the things you're trying to accomplish, and what am I going to make a recommendation for? Because I may not always say, oh yeah, just do this 100%. I think you're right on, Suzanne. I mean, it's if our primary productivity applications and our primary backend applications are Microsoft, well, who knows better how to protect their own applications than Microsoft, right? But if I'm also now integrating in Atlassian products or SAP or Salesforce or something, which is really what's happening, right? We're getting all of these different best in breed softwares. They're all tied together. Guess what? A lot of them have security around their own applications as well. And so I don't think it's a matter of saying I'm going all in with Microsoft. I think what you're saying is I'm selecting the software that I want to purchase and go in on, and Microsoft has figured out the best way to secure their software. And so if 80% of my portfolio is Microsoft software, then 80% of my security portfolio is very likely to be Microsoft as well.
You would think. Yeah, exactly.
I'll also say that it kind of worked itself out that there are so many former Microsoft VPs that have gone to Qualtrics and SAP and a New Relic and and Workday and kind of all these different companies, and then suddenly announced these Microsoft stack integrations and that kind of stuff. So I think it's a brilliant strategy. I'm sure it was all 100% strategy
totally
from
planned out.
Microsoft leadership. Oh yeah.
A lot of forethought on that one.
But I think what we were talking about, everything that we just said is, and I think you have we're all partners here with Microsoft. I don't know the makeup of people attending the session, but here's a massive partner opportunity to help customers, whether you're an ISV, you're an SI, consulting company, or an MSP, and providing services out there. Getting customers over this. There are very few customers out there in existence that are single stack companies. Nobody goes in and says, we are a Microsoft shop and that's all we buy. That's all that we do. Those companies don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so the multi-cloud is out there, and companies that are slow to support it will find themselves behind.
Yeah, I would agree. So Ryan has a good question, by the way, in chat. Curious about how teams connect with multiple companies will affect incident response and breach notifications.
Yeah, once again, I mean, you're from a troubleshooting perspective, you're looking at, what am I doing in teams versus what is connecting to teams, and who, what side of the line are you on in terms of responsibility? And I think, that once again, great opportunity for partners, because essentially, a lot of times when you work with something, this much about it. But when you're an architect, especially when you're a consultant architect and you work with, many, many products and many, many partners, you can see where those little lines kind of are. And a lot of times we have contacts, both at Microsoft and at some of those other partner companies to reach out and say, hey, we're having a connection issue. You know, Microsoft is saying it's on your end. Can we all get on a call together and maybe work this out? Where I don't think a client always has the option to maybe do that on their own.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
And
But
I
I
think
also-
from an individual company standpoint, I think you're also looking at kind of the different layers helping you out, right? So if you have a breach or you have an incident where you're trying to respond, you're now working within a silo of in a very specific area of being able to say, you know what? I know your area is super sensitive. It's been locked down ×5, and these are the ways it was locked down. It's not related at all to the separate silo
Yeah.
that was breached. We have a lot of information now to be able to let them know why their information is safe, how we've protected it, and how it's, yes, we were breached, but it was over here, and this is how you're protected, and we're good, and you can move on. Whereas I think in the past, we've been scrambling a little more to really
Mhm.
understand what's where. Like, how do you even know on a file share what's shared? It's security by obscurity. We have so much more information and improved architecture to help us with that conversation now.
I think this just screams the growth potential for the enterprise architect. It just, for years we've been talking about how incredibly important solution architects and enterprise architects and infrastructure architects and security architects. And I know that it's a luxury role in many places, but it screams the need for it.
Yeah. Christian.
Thank you for recognizing my hand up for the question. No, I was, on this topic, I was actually gonna just a side topic here, but it's a similar topic around syntax content assembly. My first thought in seeing that too was that's another wrinkle in the fabric that we have to track and be aware of is, how are we automating? Where's this content being pulled from? Who then has access to it? Are there nuances in security around the components that are being pulled in? How is what's net new that's created? Where does that sit? Even if it has those unique components from elsewhere in the organization pulled together, what's the security profile of the asset that's created there? So there's some complexity there, which I didn't get any detail on and was hoping for out of, I know we all have like a high bar. We have questions that we want answered at Ignite, and then we get a lot of some great content and stuff, but very marketing centric, content. Yep. And so we'll just have to wait with our answers.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you bring up a good point. I think to what Sharon was saying, solution architecture and architects in general, we're talking information architects, are going to have to start thinking about data architects are going to have to start thinking about where's my data being used. And now it's opened up to so many more places that you really have to have a good plan in place to be able to make sure you don't have any breaches, don't have any issues, right? Is it that SharePoint site needs to be confidential versus not, right? Those types of things. And then the data that's in it, what are you going to do? So I think to a certain extent, it is getting more complex when it comes to that. But then that means IT needs to talk to the business a little bit more to be able to really understand their requirements.
Well,
Sharon.
That is, you just described what should be happening on a regular cadence in every organization around governance. This is exactly the kind of conversation. So you can raise the flags around like, hey, we're creating the solutions. What are the implications? All right, let's run through a scenario. We're creating, using content assembly, we're building this now, like we've got a lot of contracts, we've got a lot of other things, which we want to automate a lot of that process and pull these things together. What are the impacts? Let's run through some examples of that, and to make sure that it's kind of like every time Microsoft with SharePoint would improve search. So initially with they pre-fast, then with the initial fast integrations, deeper and deeper integration. Each time search got better, not to say that it's perfect because it's not, but each time it got better. But we would hear from clients at all stages like, well, search is broken. They would say, well, it's showing things that it shouldn't say. It's like, no, it's working. It's now surfacing your lack of information architecture, of privacy and permissions, and kind of all those other things that you weren't doing. Here's another example of where it's going to uncover, it's called sloppiness in our planning. And that's what the governance body should be discussing. I would say like every 2 weeks. At least going through and discussing that stuff within your organization.
Yeah, and I think what Suzanne threw in the chat is, when you're doing low code, no code type scenarios, I mean, I don't know how many conversations I've had, but when we're talking about anything Power Platform, the next thing right after that is we want to do that. It should be, what's the governance behind that? Because, and I think we've all seen that with the customers we've worked with, is if you don't, then it's going to be Wild West, and people are just going to be just like, where did that come from? How did that work? Back to Christian's point.
That was part of the,
right?
Remember when it was SharePoint? I mean, that's why the sandbox solutions, that concept is exactly the scenario. So now we've with the SharePoint framework, we've made it easier to go without breaking things, to build and extend and do all those things. But it seems like we've almost kind of did away with, at least conversation around, the governance aspect of sandbox solutions. We need to get back into a modern sandbox for Power Platform, to be a better support our citizen developers.
Well, even more so, if you think about the FAQ maker bots and all of these very straightforward, I can follow a fact, kind of build it in Azure and out it goes. I mean, I think that is one of the unknown governance things that we probably should talk more about, because Power Platform, a lot of people are getting on the governance train, and that's great. SharePoint, we already have a rich understanding of governance, but the Azure is where I think that we probably need to have more conversations, because we've seen some bots go really wrong, and they had no idea, because you have these junior programmers saying, "Oh, I can just code that because I'm in the business," and off they go reading their FAQ, and they unleash a security challenge and opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. And especially with a lot more of these pieces being built on Azure, now it's just a much bigger environment. Yeah, completely. Wow, good conversations, guys, so far, and some good questions coming in through the, nice job. All right, so I know, so Sharon, we hit yours. Christian, we hit your big announcements. Suzanne, did you have any big things that you saw at Ignite that you were like?
Well, I think we touched on them, most of them anyway. But I thought, we haven't really talked about the asterisk clouds. So the healthcare cloud, the financial cloud, the retail cloud, and how they can be a game changer for all of us, whether you're a partner or whether you're inside an organization. I think that might be a great topic, because there's a lot of things that you can do now, especially in the healthcare cloud, with the whole integration of how do I connect to the different systems? And then, oh, wait, I can do these really intelligent bots through their healthcare framework. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there that I think is just starting to be understood.
Yep. Have any of you guys have any experience with these other clouds yet?
I have a friend who works for a nonprofit, a large global nonprofit, and they're implementing the nonprofit for the cloud right now. Basically, I will tell you the feedback has been that, I think they like the potential of all the templates and features that kind of come with that. But I do know that it's been a little bit of an arduous journey for them to get it all set up the way that they want. But I still think they see the true potential in having something that's more dedicated to the things that they need, as opposed to something that's enterprise.
Yeah, it's a little bit bleeding edge right now, but the potential is there. As we start working it through with customers, Microsoft is going to get that feedback, especially when we very first started working with Healthcare Cloud. It was a very bumpy at the beginning, and we're working right now with the Finance Cloud and the Retail Cloud, and it's a little bumpy. But if you can stay the course and help Microsoft understand the dynamics of how they all can interrelate, that there's a lot of opportunity there. So definitely would encourage not only organizations, but team members and partners to work on it.
Well, I was just going to say, partners, I think, is going to be the big one, because I think they're going to help with that bleeding edge side of things. They're going to have that connection with Microsoft to be able to say, hey, guys, that feedback loop, to be able to make things a little bit easier on the individual customers.
So I
Agreed.
see a comment on here. How is the feedback getting back to Microsoft? And it's a fantastic question, especially for this group, because I get asked that a lot. And I think, feedback comes back through a multitude of channels, but most importantly, it's things like you just said, partners, MVPs, RDs. We obviously are constantly submitting feedback to them in terms of, things we're seeing, things that need to be fixed. But even everyday individuals or users, if you're using the products and you really think that something needs to be better, you can turn that in through one of many different channels, or you can buddy up with somebody in the community that's an MVP, an RD, or an MCT, or some sort of connection to Microsoft, and let them know. And for the most part, we all know each other, so it's really easy for us to get that feedback back to Microsoft in a way that's going to matter.
But I know that user voice is gone, and Don, you did the intro, you walked through and talked about the new platform that's out there. That is a fantastic way to provide feedback.
Yep.
And Microsoft, I don't know, I haven't heard the numbers out of it, but I mean, user voice, you had you had to have 5 upvotes for Microsoft to formally respond, and they're going to do something similar on the new platform. There's also a Microsoft tech community where the product teams, a lot of them live out there. So that is a great place where you can go and provide that direct, this is impacting my business or my customer, and you can have that connection.
Well, and I think things
I think if you're a partner, there's some really great opportunities. There are monthly partner connects for all of these different clouds. I think I have 10 meetings a week with various Microsoft groups. It's getting crazy. But the important thing is if there is something that you're passionate about, go find out who's blogging about it. Try to find them on LinkedIn or on Twitter or wherever your social media thing is. A lot of them are pretty responsive, and obviously you can find all of us. We're all everywhere, so you could find us as well. But there's lots of avenues, and the really great thing that I want to give kudos to Microsoft is that they're listening. If you're part of a large organization, those account teams are listening, and they will go find the right person. So if you do have a Microsoft account exec that you work with, those guys, they are motivated and they are listening, and they will get the right person in the room.
That is a great point, Suzanne. 10, 15 years ago, here's the difference. They were never measured on this, so they didn't care. Ultimately, they care now because they're being measured on it. And so they have to be responsive. So they have to, but that also means that, and I find myself constantly saying, it's did you raise the issue? Did you point? Did you fill out a ticket?
Did you do something?
Going to support, opening a ticket. That's a different conversation, a longer conversation. But through social and through these other channels, it's much quicker than going through the support channel. But a lot of times, depending on the issue, you need to have the ticket. Provide the ticket reference number in all the other social outreach you do.
Well, especially if it is an issue, right? If it is an incident, then absolutely agree. But if it's hey, I just want to do a feedback. I mean, and I am part of the customer success unit at Microsoft. We get this all the time. And, 9 times out of 10, when somebody has a conversation in a meeting and they say, I wish it did that, that goes directly to the engineering team in a feedback loop. And to your point, I really feel that the engineering team is doing a much better job. I work with teams directly, but I think a lot of the Microsoft groups are doing this where they're taking that feedback, aggregating it and saying, oh, wow, there is this need, right? We really need to be able to make that happen or something similar to it and then get it on the roadmap. So I would agree with that.
And a great place to do that too is that there's a new blog post that comes out. So if it's out on the Microsoft 365 blog, or if it's in tech community where information is being shared out, and that there's a gap, that there's a feature gap there or something, that's the place to post it. Post your comment, post your question around that. Those are the people to interact with and do that outreach because they will respond.
And you'd be surprised how many times, and I've seen this, where if you tweet about something, that the product teams are actually looking for that.
I was actually going to say that. And, if you're blogging, blog stuff that comes up, they'll comment on blogs, they're very, this is not the Microsoft of old. They're engaged, they're watching, so for those of us MVPs, we also have to keep that in mind when we're posting stuff. They see what we post. So yeah, I think it's a really engaged, really connected Microsoft community right now. I love it. I think it's great.
I would agree. But thank you for catching that chat, Sharon. I think that's a very important thing for us to kind of talk through and understand, because it is the user voice. Really, I think that matters nowadays. Absolutely. All right, so Stephanie, I don't think we've heard from you necessarily from you what you think the big announcements were for this particular event.
I think we covered what I would have said before, but I can't believe we've gotten to this point in the conversation and we've not talked about Viva at all.
I was waiting.
So I have to bring that up. It's such a big piece of the employee
Suzanne
experience.
said employee experience, which to a certain extent kind of lends to that, but not necessarily, right? So
well,
good point.
So, where I think this is headed, and something that I keep hearing from Microsoft, and I chuckle because it's a really big fancy way of saying this, but they keep saying ubiquitous computing and ambient intelligence. And it kind of plays into that whole Viva thing as well, because all it's saying is, like, we've got computers everywhere. We're taking our devices everywhere with us. We are surrounded now by data. And now what Microsoft is doing, big picture, they're weaving all of that intelligence into everything we do. And what I like about Viva in particular, it's not, there's 4 different modules, but the Insights module in particular, to kind of focus on that for a minute, because we've talked a lot about the collaboration stuff, but Viva Insights in particular is really interesting to me, because we need to keep an eye on our wellness. We're so hyper connected. We're so collaborating. We're doing it before work hours and after work hours and on the weekend. And we have to keep an eye on that other piece of, like, being able to separate and say, are we actually being productive with all of that extra time? Are we protecting our focus time? Do we have enough time to really look at that? And I think, while there were no really big announcements other than the acquisition of that 5th module that's coming for Viva, I think making sure that we're looking at this insights piece and integrating that wellness concept into everything else we're doing is just critical, because we need that insight in order to be more productive and to prevent burnout. And especially now with hybrid, who's in, who's out? Are we working okay? Do we have the right groups in the office at the same time? Do we need to change that up a little? I think all of those things are really going to help us tweak all of the really great technology that we have. How do we make sure as humans we're using that technology well and protecting ourselves at the same time?
I would agree. I mean, have you guys started having, as consultants, have you been having these conversations around this topic? And are people interested? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean,
I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the biggest one right now is surprisingly Viva Topics. Everyone is really, really excited about the possibility of bringing content together and aggregating in a way that's more intelligent. So content and people and conversations and things can happen, and they don't have to manually curate everything. That combined with syntax, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about that, since we were on the whole partners session last week about it. But the technologies that Microsoft is bringing to bear to allow information to be easily findable is really great. And a lot of organizations are really gravitating towards that. And then learning is also something that we've had a lot of conversations around with learning.
Stephanie, I know you glossed over it, but the Ally.io acquisition. Not that I'm not excited about the other parts. I mean, hey, I brought up I know it's not formally part of Viva, but the syntax ad as being a big deal. But yeah, I think that there's obviously Microsoft making huge investments around Viva, and there are a lot of people that are still figuring out, because there's an adjustment to be made for a lot of organizations. For all of those different pieces. Again, I go back to my comment I made earlier about, like, we worried so much about keeping applications and servers and services up and running. We weren't paying as much attention to how those applications and services were actually being used, and whether it was being done in a healthy, holistic way. And that's a lot of what Viva is. But a big piece that's been missing from my Viva life has been the OKR, which is the objectives, objectives, KPIs. What's the R? I don't know. Anyway, reporting, I don't know.
Something
Anyway,
like that, yeah.
but around that side of it is you think about that as a I have such a I'm a business book junkie, and a lot of the ways that I've managed teams and coming from a project management background, I completely understand to get a team functioning well together. Everyone needs to understand their roles and responsibilities and how the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis rolls up to what the team has been doing, and what the team is doing, how that rolls up to the business unit, and the business unit to the entire company. You know, the CEO of the company needs to be able to come out and say, this next year, these are our 4 objectives. And then everyone in the organization should know the work that they're doing, how it helps meet those 4 objectives, and be able to show that. And that's essentially what this module, and which will eventually become whatever they name it, the Viva OKR or whatever. That's what that component is. It'll help us to unify our activities around our shared objectives and metrics. I'm excited about that. And it'll feed into all of those other aspects, and become an important part of, like, certainly the way that we manage teams, the way that we do our annual review process, and all of that, to make sure that is everybody moving in the same direction? Are we moving in the right direction? And then how healthy are we as we move in that direction?
Yep.
There's a bigger push, I think, and this came up in the keynote, I think, with Satya, on why do we work? And there's a bigger need for people to feel valued, to understand the company mission, to feel part of the company mission. And this is actually something, we're a young, smaller organization. And when we sat down with the group at the beginning of this year and said, here's our strategy, here's our mission, this is what we're headed for, everyone loved it. And I realized I had underestimated how important it is for the whole team to know and understand what are those goals, and how are we going to get there, because they all want that too, and they all want to know how they fit into the bigger piece. What's my puzzle piece of that bigger picture? So I think that this is exactly where that's headed, and just being able to pull everyone together and communicate those things. So I don't have experience with this particular application, but I think there are a lot of people going, what is this? How does this fit into the picture? So I think it'll be interesting to see, once they get a hold of it and how it works, how that's going to really help everyone across the organization.
Yeah, I would agree. Very cool. Good conversations. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody out there, the user group, have any other specific questions outside of what we've been throwing in the chat? Again, please raise your hand if you have a question. Come off mute. We'll answer that question as much as possible. So were you guys glued to your computers the whole time, or were you guys like watching the recording after the fact, because you definitely missed a couple of them?
I'm glued every day to the
It's true, you are, yeah.
and so no, I'll tell you one thing that I miss the in-person conferences, because you're able to sequester yourself from the rest of the world and work and dedicate yourself to that. Obviously, you can consume a lot more, but with that, the retention is lower, by doing it in this model. Having said that, I absolutely love the backpack feature. I don't feel like I have to be everywhere, knowing that within an hour or 24 hours, at the worst case, all the content, the decks and all that would be shared out for all those sessions. And so I'm able to go in and be like, I'm triple booked in this hour with the real work, and there's other things, backpack. So in fact, this morning I went through and I watched another video. It's just on my list as I'm going through my backpack of stuff that I missed. And so I love that.
Yeah.
I love the backpack. I was all over the backpack.
Yeah, I love the ability to pre-Ignite rollout, be able to go in and see what everything is, get signed up for things, add it to my agenda. And then like Christian said, I mean, let's be really honest, right? We block our calendars and we do our best. But at the end of the day, if something comes up, like you're watching it later, and it's really handy to basically say, I know that I wanted to do this. And so now I can go back and find those things, which is really, really great.
Yeah, I would agree. So Ryan has a good question. What was your guys' top breakout session that you were like, this is really good information that I think everybody should go watch? You have to go in your backpacks and figure that one out quick.
I feel like the one with where Jeff Teeper keynoted, it's like a modern work something. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But I mean, in terms of collaboration, it was just a really great collection.
I have it open right here. I was looking for, where's the session number on this thing?
Maybe it doesn't have a session number.
Yeah, it's called Rich Secure Content Collaboration for Hybrid Work.
Yep, that's the one. I couldn't take notes fast enough. In fact, I kept hitting pause. That's a great thing about this all being on demand. I keep hitting pause. I write things down, or I'll write down a word that I didn't understand. Like, what is this? Go look this up, right? So then I can kind of sidebar, go get up to date on that, and then come back. So I sat down over the weekend. I probably watched sessions for 4 hours and did that, and just got up to date. And that really helps me put all of it together and kind of like, what's that big picture? Where are they headed? Because they even label things like, this is a core theme, this is a keynote, this is a breakout. So it really helps you figure out what you're looking at. I think it's great. It doesn't replace the in-person stuff at all, but having this stuff available to us for a while is it's really helpful.
Yeah, I would agree.
I was just kind of looking through my list of things that I enjoyed. I think I don't know that it's hard to say one, but I like the fact, so like there's this one for the BPN notation. I really enjoyed being able to have things to go to that were not just development centric. So BPMN is the idea of being able to document business process modeling, which is a lot of what I spend my time doing. And I thought that was a really good session. Not just that it was a good session, but it was such an amazing session to add in to, here's all this Microsoft stuff, but guess what? There's more than just, creating applications and integrating applications, but also there's kind of these real life skills. So I typically tend to watch those. I love watching the ones that have to do with government and the ones that have to do with the real world and how people are using things. A lot of the user stories. There was one user story, I can't even remember which one it was. My brain's so full, but there was one that was a user story that was really good that was talking about, how they're using things now and how much they're getting out of it. But I think those are my favorites across the board, because I can always go back and watch learn videos around how to do something. But what I don't think we see in the everyday world is, those use cases of real people doing real things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's the most valuable. I know in the past when I've done events and things like that, MinSpug or SharePoint Saturday, those types of things, those are the sessions that people flock to. Like, how did they do that? Because I want to be able to take a look at that and see if I can apply that to or adjust it to make that happen. So I would agree with that. Susan was asking what that one you were talking about, BPM.
Yeah, it was just BPMN by Lucidchart. I was just looking at that.
There we go. Thanks.
Yeah. And I do love the fact that not every single session in Ignite is all Microsoft. It's Microsoft centric, but I love that we're, like Stephanie mentioned before, this is not the Microsoft of old. This is not Microsoft, right? It's, hey, here's Microsoft, which is a very heavy portion of this, but here's all these other things that kind of work into your day-to-day world of what you're going to do with this and how you're going to do it. And honestly, Lucidchart obviously is a competitor to some degree, but if you're doing BPMN, whether you're using Visio or Lucidchart is less important as it is to somebody teaching you that BPMN is a thing and that you need to understand it.
Agreed.
I'll just say that is the biggest negative about the event, and just where we are, is that the majority of the content that's missing from this event is the community-driven content.
Yeah.
And so that a lot of the hands-on experience, the examples, the neutral perspectives on what works and doesn't work, that's what's missing from a lot of this content. And of course, we'll get that trickle down, benefit over the next, the few months as partners do other content elsewhere, but it's not all concentrated in one place. That's what we lose from this event. There needs to be and I know that there's other events, there's stuff that's still going on. You have Sharon who's down in Cabo for an example of that, but we can't all be at all of those other, events. And we do look for, these marquee Microsoft events to be able to go and get this kind of content. It's lacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the in-person thing that the stuff that I miss is like the hands-on labs section that we all jump in whenever we get a chance and actually do things, or instructor-led training that they had, that it really got down into the weeds on some of this technology that we now have to go and implement, and not having some of that capability when a virtual event happens, we're missing something for sure.
That's true. I really did miss having a hands-on lab, and they used to have some that you could go online and do, and they kind of guide you through, but I haven't seen anything on it lately, and I think it's because the technology is changing so quickly they don't have time to go build it. But that makes it even more important for us to know and understand, at least at a high level. What was really great was at the last in-person event I think I went to, we were able to talk with the product group right there and say, hey, I have a question about this or understand about this. But one session that I would say that was quite interesting was the Empower Everyone for a New World of Hybrid Work. That was an on-demand session. I really liked that one. It was done by Jared Spatero. If anybody wants to go take a look at how hybrid work could potentially help everyone, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll throw that in the chat.
I put in the chat too is a list of, so a lot of all the HOL stuff is still there. So we did some events. So we incorporated into our regional, our SharePoint Saturday. We rebranded as M365 Friday. So we shifted it to Friday and rebranded it a couple years back. But we partnered with Microsoft locally, and who actually brought devices down and did hands-on labs and things. So the stuff, it's actually gotten easier, but the events, need to then, I think they didn't, again, I don't know anything inside, but they didn't incorporate that into Ignite per se, because it's just readily available via Azure to the site, to that link. So there's things that are out there, but that's as we start to get back into in-person events, that's something that we've talked about. I know, again, locally, that we want to be able to include that capability and have people kind of proctor it. So bring your own machine, log in, walk through, but have people there in the room to answer questions to kind of facilitate that process. So there's ways that you can do that.
And Stephanie, thank you for throwing that in with the session on Teams Next workshop that you guys are doing at EduCon. Yeah, and thank you for that. EduCon, for those who don't know, it used to be SP Fest, which was very popular, and then recently changed to EduCon 365. So thank you for that. Mike Brecky, you made a general security comment from some of our customers. Some folks are concerned in kind of security in third-party apps and Teams apps area. What security process checks do the developers apps bots have to go through to get published? What assurance can we give to customers for a particular app? Do organizations turn off apps in Teams? Well, I'll tell you that one. Yes, they do. That last part of it, they do, because they don't have any of those things in place. And then you either have the let's turn it off, and then slowly trickle it in, or let's just leave it on and see what happens. I see both ends of the spectrum. But
so I'll look for the link here, but for example, so AppPoint, a number of our solutions have gone through the certification process and have it out there. Like we're one of ours. So we have this issue. We have a free app out there. It's actually the #2 most downloaded app for Teams, which is called MyHub, which is free navigation tool, can be a front end for provisioning. So it's a really cool tool. Go take a look at that. But so that went through and got certified. It's approved for the GovCloud and a bunch of other things. So we've got certifications on it. I'm not an expert around that, but of what it takes to go through that, it took a while for us to get those certifications, to get that approved, so that it can be accepted into these multiple clouds. And so there's not a ton of solutions out there that have gone through that process. So yeah, you can do a little bit of research around that, of whether again, I'm not an expert. I should go look it up and share the link. So hang on, let me go look for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I definitely think, and I put this in here, it's a governance question, right? So I believe that every organization should have some sort of governance document that essentially says, what is our risk tolerance for third-party applications and how do we manage that, and what is the process by which third-party applications need to be, you know, reviewed? Does it require initiative? Does it require a pilot? Does it require testing? You know, like, what are the things that are required to make us feel good about a third-party application coming into our organization, regardless of how well it's tested or managed before it gets to the App Store? I really still believe that every organization should have a third-party app governance policy, because then it doesn't make any difference. If you say for a third-party app to have a pilot, we have to have initiatives around it, or we have to have a pilot, or for a third-party app to even be considered, here's the steps it must go through for it to even be considered in our organization. I don't care if it's a SharePoint app or a third part or a Teams app, or simply just a generic URL that you're going to do something. It should definitely follow some sort of policy and procedure that your internal governance group has decided meets the letter of the law to make you feel comfortable with that level of risk. Once you've done that, then it's deployed. And yeah, everybody that I work with, I think at this point, has their app not necessarily disabled, not the App Store disabled, but at least configured to say, here are the apps you are allowed to use and download and connect with at a bare minimum. Some of them deploy them individually as needed. Some of them say, we're just going to let you have a portal, but these are the apps that we've reviewed and we've said we're okay with. But it's definitely, I think, more of a governance question than anything.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you know, in my past experience, a lot of companies already do this with other types of apps, just not Teams apps and, you know, anything Office 365, because it's coming in a different way. But it's kind of like that the App Store mentality that's permeated through our society nowadays. It's another way that we can get things that will make us more productive. But that means security has to be up on how those things work and having those governance processes in place. Absolutely.
And it's no different than our kids being able to install apps on their phone and a parent having to say yes before it happens at a bare minimum, right? Like, I mean, we're used to this now.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a good point. Good question. Wow, got a lot going on in chat. Thanks for guys for keeping up on that. Anything that I missed? I don't think I missed anything.
Sharon, I don't know if you know, but there was a question on the if the Cabo event is the last one under the SPS event.
Yes, it is true. As far as I know, the Cabo event is the last event on SPS events.
That's a sad day.
I know.
But just happy that you're down there, you know, soaking in some of the sun. Excellent. All right. Any other big thoughts? Any other things that from Ignite that you guys thought of? Because I mean, we've been kind of going all over the place, but this is a good conversation. All right. Well, then I have to ask the one. So who do you follow on Twitter? Where do you get your most important information? And you can't say someone that's on this meeting.
Well, geez.
So I had a
assuming we would.
Sorry.
Oh, that's true. I'm sorry.
I can do it. It's pretty easy. So on Facebook, I'm always on Facebook, and most of my stuff, believe it or not, I'm still over there on Facebook, and I don't do as much on Twitter. But the person I like watch because he's always got the greatest comments ever is Eric Schups. He and I have known each other for a very long time. And he always has the greatest comments. So I'm always waiting for his comments. And then I know, oh, I got to go see what's going on with that. So that's someone that I do watch a lot. As far as blogs and that sort of thing, I really troll the Office blogs, and I troll the Teams blogs, and I troll the Healthcare Cloud blogs. Because they have a great wealth of information, and then I just move my way from there. Vesa and team from the product teams and development teams, they have some really great videos that they put out every month, and they showcase different customers and different clients and different elements. So highly recommend go checking out Vessa's stuff and what he does. It's really great.
Excellent. And looks like Tanya wanted Eric's last name. So if you could put a couple of those things in there, that would be great, Suzanne.
Yeah, I wrote down so number one, first and foremost, for anybody who's either new to Twitter or doesn't follow a lot of people on Twitter, all of the Microsoft product teams are on Twitter. And honestly, I probably follow and have notifications for pretty much every single one of them, mostly because a lot of times you'll get information there faster than anywhere else. They'll say, hey, this new thing is coming, or hey, there's information about this. People will reply to it. But definitely the product teams themselves, and the product managers. So the product teams, but also the product managers individually, and anybody that's kind of associated with the marketing side of Microsoft. I definitely have all of those people on Twitter, and I use Twitter more as a feed, I think, than an interactive platform. Whereas I use Facebook, I know Suzanne was saying she's on Facebook. I use Facebook as a community builder. I try to keep that a little bit more personal and really kind of hang out with people. But Twitter is definitely more of an information feed for me. And so I will just simply follow anything I think is interesting. And then if it gets to be incorrect, or I don't like it, or I don't want to listen to it anymore, then you can just simply turn off the notifications and, curate that feed.
Yep. Absolutely. Pete was asking about, is there an MVP user list? And I think I'm just going to throw out the link to the Find My MVP information. That you can find a lot of that information out there. Yeah, as long as you guys are keeping it up to date, right? So
Louise Freeze has a lot of really nice lists that she's made on Twitter where she's put a lot of things together, and I think she's done a couple of those especially for specific areas.
Agreed. Yep.
I'm going to add Joanne Klein to the list if you're into compliance and retention policies and things like that. I mean, she is an absolute just queen on that stuff. Like all of her stuff is step by step. This is how you go implement it. Whenever I have a compliance or retention question, she's already blogging about it. New adaptive scopes, she's already got stuff out there for that. So that's one. And then for the other one, Kathy Moya is the other one. She does a lot of really good stuff on like AltSpace VR. She's really deep into that. So I'll drop those two names in there, but those are two people that I follow. I love their stuff.
Yeah, I would add, so Joanne was on my list as well. Joanne and Sue Handley so Joanne on the compliance side and records management, and Sue over on the information architecture and governance standpoint. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. I'm a huge fan of the troop behind regarding 365. So you can go out there and search for that if you're not familiar with that. But specifically. Good friends, Daryl Webster and Daniel Glenn, who do a lot of the content. And I know there's other brands around there, but you look at just keeping up on message center updates and productivity tools and any new announcement. They are one of the first ones out of the chute and do a great job. If there's ever a security related question, Liam Cleary is my go-to security guy within this world. That's hello, it's Liam is his Twitter handle. And then to round it out, I'm a huge fan of my partner in crime around productivity, but Tom Duff and also Sherry Oswald, two names that we do a lot. I do a lot of stuff with them around productivity, but they're both troublemakers, by the way, Tom and Sherry, in different ways. So
yes, they are.
Yeah,
I would agree. And Sharon, the Power BI ones, Guy in a Cube, I can't say enough about him. And not about the cell, I do love it. Look, Ducks, I love. That's a great example. So good names you guys are throwing out here. I really appreciate that, and thank you, group, that you guys are throwing out also who you listen and watch, right? But and specifically, I'll say the Regard 365 video specifically. I think the YouTube channel that they're doing, I think Tom and group are also doing a message center, and I forget who's all. I know Tom's in there. I know Tamara's in there. I forget. There's a couple other people that jump in there. They also do a version of that as well that I think is pretty good. They do a good job. Really,
Jennifer,
taking each of those.
Jennifer Mason.
Jennifer Mason. Yep. Absolutely. Daniel Webster and Daniel Glenn.
Daniel Glenn and Daryl Webster and Daniel
Daryl
Glenn.
Webster, that's right.
Yep.
Those are that's Tandy was asking about that on Message Center update. So okay. Well, thank you guys for sharing that information. I think that's always one thing, especially when you're talking about somebody who really is into their product. Who do you listen to? And I think that's really important for people to see. Yeah, you listen to a lot of the same ones that they're probably already doing, but a couple more were added to that. So thank you for doing that. Any last words? Any last things that you guys want to throw out here? We're just going to go around the horn here, starting with Suzanne. Any last words of advice or anything that you want to give before we leave for today?
I hope that if people are able to watch Ignite, that they are inspired. I think that was one word that I kept thinking over and over as I was watching all the sessions, because now we're actually have enough APIs. We have enough of the framework as far as technologies. We've got the solid and secure cloud. Now we can actually go start innovating and being inspired to really make a difference, not only to organizations, but to people. And I think that to me is so important. So I'm hoping that after today that you guys are inspired to really make a difference for people, because that's really why we're all doing this, is to help people and help them get through.
Awesome. Sharon?
Sorry, I'm still looking up Twitter names for you. No,
She'll be doing it for the
agree.
next 30 minutes.
I totally agree. I think that it's so fantastic that we're starting to really focus on tying this all together. I'm talking to so many people, and I have several clients who are like total cutting edge, bleeding edge type of clients who are like, basically, it's almost like happy and sad at the same time, because I'm happy because they're really adopting and really engaging, and I'm really frustrated sometimes because they're like, is this ready yet? Is it ready yet? And if it's not ready yet, we're going to customize because we want to build it ourselves before it comes out. And then here we are 3 months, 6 months later, now it's out of the box and we're switching over from all that effort that we customized to, right? So, I mean, I think it's really nice that Microsoft is really getting to the point where we can integrate all this stuff, like Christian said earlier, out of the box, maybe as natively and organically as possible, so that everything just kind of flows. And as they continue to make updates, I think this is the biggest thing, right? If you have customized stuff, you have to keep track of all of the stuff that's going together. But if it is all integrated together natively, you don't have to keep updating all that stuff as much. It just automatically pushes through. And that's such a huge thing when we talk about maintenance and support and security and adoption and all of that stuff, is that, it just works, right? It all goes together. So I'm really happy they're getting there. Yeah,
I would agree. Christian?
Oh, I just was thinking too of what I was going through my notes. I know everybody else does this. As I'm watching stuff and take down things that pop out to me, but I'm really shocked that we didn't talk about the Azure Purview capability. But I know nothing about it. It's actually in my notes to go investigate, or certain keywords like pop out from these things. Again, I've got a bunch of stuff in my backpack around it to go back through. But so my kind of takeaway from all of this is that use it as an opportunity for not just that it's a point in time, like the event is over and done with. But use it as an opportunity to go reach out to people who made comments, obviously the speakers, the presenters from that, the Microsoft folks around it. But use it as an opportunity to say, like, who's commenting on this? Who else what was mentioned within that? And then reach out and connect with those people. Like we're missing one of the core aspects of these types of events, which is the face-to-face, the partnering, the relationships that we go and develop. Like I made friends at my first non-Microsoft employee SharePoint conference in 2009. I've been to all of them, but as an employee, the first two, to be able to go in 2009, friendships that I made at that event, the other two, I was locked up in the HOL lab. So, I was helping run those things. But, I'm still talking with people on a regular basis and those connections that I made. And so, find opportunities to get to know people, like to extend your network and go outside of your comfort level, reach out to people you don't know and just say, hey, saw your comments on this session, or you presented this. I just really like to connect, and just do that. Make that a habit to extend your network and to ask questions.
And I kind of want to piggyback on that for 2 seconds. I think that's important. I think anybody has that ability to do that and then have that conversation with that person. I think we're more aligned nowadays to be able to do those types of things, especially now with the hybrid work and everything now. But I can't wait to get back in person to be able to do that again. I would agree.
And if you know anything about Azure Purview and would like to ping me and tell me all about it,
tell him all about it.
I would love to have the shortened, the summarized version of that.
Excellent. All right, Stephanie.
All right. Well, I think everything that you all have said has been fantastic wrap up. I think my thoughts here, what stuck out to me was a comment about it that they went back to this a couple times about looking at the next 3, 5, 10 years, the next decade, and that we're truly in the midst of like a tech revolution. And I think it's super exciting. I think we're all the ones responsible for changing the way that these organizations work. It's a huge responsibility, but it's also a huge opportunity for us and a career building moment. So I think to echo what everyone said here, lean on your community. You can't do it alone. There's too much. There's too much to know, so lean on those that have the experience and the expertise, and use that to propel yourself forward. And lots of great content here and lots of exciting things ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you guys taking some time this afternoon, getting your expertise and talking about Ignite. Again, everybody in the user group, we appreciate your ability to do that today. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. With that, I'm going to stop spotlighting everybody, and then we're going to flip over to, I want to get my deck back up. And we're going to do our survey for the end. If I can find what I'm looking for, here we go. I got too much stuff up here, guys. All right, so let's do a quick survey. This is what we want you to please take advantage of us, because we're giving away something. So if you recall, we have 2 $100 gift cards that CDW gave to us to be able to do. So please, 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 please take this opportunity to be able to register for that. And we're just going to take a couple minutes, let you guys do that. And then we're going to do random drawing for those 2 $100 gift cards, and we'll get that to you guys.
I will be deleting anybody from the board that does the survey.
What? Ah, dang it. Party pooper Doug. All right.
I'm still answering with some snarky feedback.
Okay, thanks, Christian. So Ron, I think we'll have to double check and see. I think Doug, did you see that question?
For me, let's see. Last month's meeting. I'll double check that.
Yeah.
I can look into that.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
I believe it was Ron. So Ron, I'll follow up on that. You should have. You normally would get it emailed, by the way.
Okay.
So if you had an email, it would have probably been, well, between last month's meeting and this month, I'm guessing. And it might have gone to your junk email,
Yeah.
but I would double check that.
Okay. Yeah, I've kind of
And-
been watching that. Yeah, we use a filter, and I've been looking at that and haven't seen it. It is possible that I just overlooked it. I can go back and review that.
Yeah, double check. If there was an issue, if you definitely don't have it, I'll follow up because I'll meet with part of the board afterwards, I believe.
Okay.
Or I'll just actually just email everyone and say, hey, review it.
All right. Thank you.
But thanks for bringing that up, Ron. We appreciate
Sure.
that. We want to make sure you get your gift card if that's the case. And by the way, Tony, I love that little string that you had there about Microsoft Expire instead of Inspire. You just brought me back to that Windows CE Me and NT workstation day. That was a good throwback. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Now you have to tell me if you have any of those licenses or those disks laying around at home still.
I've loaded them all onto my Roku.
I love that. All right, Doug, how are we doing? We still have a Vista going around, Tony? Wow. So how many do we have that have done the survey so far?
Forms always makes me re-log in.
Of course.
So, only one of the few sites that's like, oh, hey, we see you're logged into everything else, but we just want you to re-log in again.
Yeah,
50
that
so
one.
far.
Exactly. Okay. All right, just give it another 30 seconds or so if you guys haven't done so, and then we'll pull the names for the two $100 Amazon.
I do have a Vista and Windows 7 disk that I keep on hand just in case.
Do you? Seriously? I got to remember, but I actually, I found it. I don't know if you guys can beat my Windows 98 disk.
Oh, it's still in wrapping and
It's
everything?
still in the wrapping and everything.
Oof.
I know. And it
That's
says
beautiful.
it's easy, it's free.
Wait, was that an AOL install disk?
No, I don't think so. I don't have any of those.
All the AOL disks the stores used to give out, like here's a free hour or something of internet.
Somebody has 98 with a USB. Oh, that's amazing.
It's one thing I miss about running the SharePoint Saturdays on Microsoft Campus was that every single one, there would be a Microsoft person who would donate something ancient as a giveaway. It was fantastic.
Oh, I bet. And those they're collector's items at that point. Thank you, Kent. Yes, good catch. Stop the recording.